Assalamu alaikum, you're listening to Unity FM on 93.5, the heart of the city. My name's Ibrar, and this is another episode of In the Studio. With me in the studio, we have two delightful guests. I'll get them to introduce themselves, but we are talking all things festival-y, for want of a better word, creative, collaboration, and Birmingham. So that's what we're talking about today, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking specifically about an exhibition / festival called the Reflection Gallery. So with me in the studio, we have Rishay. We'll get to the bottom of your name because that was quite interesting as well, if that's okay. And we also have Saajan. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for having us.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Rishay, I'm going to kick off with you, ladies first. No offense, Saajan. Rishay, I want to get straight into it. I didn't really kind of go into specifics about the festival because I think it's best coming from you guys. So, Reflection Gallery, talk to me.
Yes. So, Reflections Gallery is definitely a community project, I want to say. Started off with the idea from my good friend Saajan here, and it's developed into definitely something for not just Handsworth and, North Birmingham, but definitely for Birmingham as a whole. So what it is, it's a free photography, film, music exhibition, and it will kick off on June 22nd at JAAG Festival with a preview of what's to come. And, there's going to be a variety there. So, as I mentioned, you have the photography, but you also have a lot of the variety within the artists as well, poetry, songs, and those works will be translated also into 6 different languages. Those languages being Urdu, Polish, Bengali, Somali, Pahari, and Punjabi.
That's right,
yes.
She gets a pass. That sounds fascinating, and really it's something that I would, hopefully, if I have time on my hands, it would something that would really interest me. But I want to know how this thing kind of came into fruition, how it was spawned. So, Saajan, Mr. Gill, tell me about how this thing, because I hear a little bird tells me that you're the brainchild, you're the guy behind the gig. So, how did it come about?
Well, for the past 5 years, I'd say, I've been collecting photographs and interviews of our local communities around Handsworth Wood, Winson Green. What I like to say is it's the ends, realistically. So, I usually take a photo of people, ask them for a little interview, and eventually I started to notice people were talking about the cost of living, people were talking about their cultural joys, sending money back home, things that stop them from feeling lonely, like the Gurdwara, the Masjid, etc., places like that, the church. And I thought, why not document this? So eventually people were talking about things like the Commonwealth Games, local things like housing issues in Barr, how Birmingham has changed, Palestine, all sorts of things that are dear to our local communities. And in my mind, a lot of it is being pushed under the carpet, and it needs a space to breathe. It needs somewhere people can hear their voices, hear that this is my community and this is a place we are safe to speak our minds. So the interviews themselves and the photos were shown at Digbirth in 2022 in a sort of a prototype display, and everyone was loving the work, which was great, but the people who were really, really resonating with Ibrar were the people from the areas where the photos were made, from the areas where the interviews were collected. So what we've done this time around, we've brought it right back to home, to the community where it was made. Handsworth Library, available to everybody. It's an outside exhibition. There's no fee at all. Everybody's welcome. And we've taken those interviews and developed them with the local community into songs, poetry, stories. This ranges from people seeking asylum, people who are carers, people who ordinarily wouldn't be, they'd be excluded from arts statistically in this country. So that's it really. We're trying to give people a platform, trying to give our community a boost in these difficult times, yeah.
You mentioned an interesting phrase there. You said these sorts of things get pushed under the carpet.
Yes.
What do you mean by that, and why do you think they get pushed? Why do you think certain discussions, things going on in the world, why do you think they get pushed under the carpet?
Well, it's a very good question, actually, and it leads on to some of the political motives of the project. So, I mean, the obvious topic would be Palestine right now. So as we know, the university encampments and all of the protests going on around the world, the people are with the Palestinians. And we've seen a huge, almost an exodus from the camp of, the media for many, many decades the media machine has been working in favour of the Israeli occupation and the brutalisation of the Palestinian people. But now we're seeing a lot of young people coming forward and putting on these protests, these encampments, these blockades. It's all sorts of things that people are doing. But even then, the big media outlets, I don't see them covering it as they should. I don't see them showing the real support that are in the streets. When I go out into Handsworth, when I go out into Aston, when I go out into Barr, I see Palestinian flags.
So are you a local boy then?
I'm local. I'm Handsworth Wood myself, yeah.
Right,
so we have a large Muslim community in all these areas. We've grown up, as we are second generation immigrants, we've grown up together in these schools which are multi-ethnic, that are very diverse. And, we share each other's struggles from our home countries, I could say. So we deeply feel for our neighbours, etc. And from what we're hearing, people don't feel their voices are heard on things like cost of living, Palestine, housing in Barr, for example. After the Commonwealth Games, you've got a huge hundreds and hundreds of flats which are completely unused. It's a derelict land, really. They're brand new flats. It's very eerie. Yeah. It's actually built on the site of the old university, which was giving a great hub for the local community. It was a place where people could go walking to their university, who otherwise would have to get 2 buses, etc., to the new campus. These are sort of things where there have been local campaigns, there have been local pushes to oppose some of these things, but unfortunately the big media houses don't cover them as I think they should. So this is where our project comes in. It's giving that voice to things that would otherwise not be heard. And that's also why we've done it DIY, because we have our own autonomy over the project too.
How did this, because Saajan mentioned, Rashid, this is a question for you. Saajan mentioned that, he's doing it DIY and you've jumped on board the project, or were you an initial co-founder?
No, I've jumped on.
You've jumped on. So, but you, and we were talking a bit off camera and off mic that, you also work as a professional, if you don't mind me. Am I allowed to say that you work in HR?
Yes.
At the moment? So, but, you felt compelled somewhat to help Saajan on this and assist him on this endeavour. Why?
That's a really good question. And I think it boils down to, first of all, seeing the enthusiasm that Saajan had when he was doing it. I mentioned earlier that we would go to the libraries and we'd have like almost collaborative sessions, but this was even before I even jumped on the project, and just from that alone, when he would tell me what he was doing and what his vision was, and then when he said, he would need some support, and he played some of the songs for me, some of the poetry, he showed me, some of the artists. I was even able to meet some of them, and I just really couldn't help but get into it, especially because they are local people. Some of them I even knew, like one of them I even knew back from my childhood. So it was
let's get a name. Who's this person that you knew from your childhood?
That is Afijam.
Okay.
She's one of the artists. And I was like, yes, I have to, I really liked it. And I think once again, going back to Saajan's enthusiasm for it, definitely when you have something like this and it's homegrown, you need someone who just has so much passion for it. So I could definitely see that, but not just within himself, within the people that he brought on, the artists, and the vision that he had for it. And I couldn't help but get on board.
It's when you guys first quite literally knocked on our door, knocked on the radio station's door, I could tell straight away that, that there was a huge, really nice rapport vibe about you both. So have you guys worked with each other before? Did you guys know each other before you met prior to this? It seems like as if are you guys friends? Did you meet at university? Did you go to university?
If you want, I can take it.
How did this beautiful
Let's
relationship
see how our stories line up.
Let's see if the stories match up.
So I do have a podcast. It's called the I Just Finished Work podcast. And I was noticing that I was having a lot of comments on a lot of the episodes that I had on my Instagram. And I was thinking, I was just curious, who is this person who is clearly listening and they seem like a really big fan? And I just was like, I wonder how they discovered the podcast. So when I looked into it, I saw that we had a mutual friend. And so I was like, okay, great. Clearly we have this mutual friend. But then also Saajan was really passionate about a particular topic that he also wanted to talk about, and he wanted to bring it to the podcast. And so we spoke, and I was like, yeah, sure, of course, I would love for you to talk about that. It was about the worker farmer protests.
That's right, the Kisan Mazdoor movement back home in India.
Yes.
So was he your first ever guest, or?
No, he wasn't my first.
I wasn't the first, yes.
He wasn't
definitely
the first.
wasn't the last either.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
I'd recommend everybody check out the podcast. It's called I Just Finished Work.
Okay, so carry on then, Rishay. So he then approached you and said, I want in on a bit of this. And then, so what did you say?
I said, of course, because I really liked as well. One thing about Saajan, what he wants to do, he's so passionate about it. So when he was telling me about what was going on in India, I was like, yeah, for sure, you have to come on and talk about it. So he came on, he spoke about it. It was a really successful podcast, or really successful episode. And since then, we've just built this friendship.
Yes,
Yeah,
a nice rapport. And it also turns out we went to primary school together.
Oh, yeah.
So
But we didn't know each other in primary school.
We didn't know each other in primary school.
Yeah.
Were you guys in the same year? Or?
We were in the same
year,
I
yeah.
think different classes, but
Different
same
classes,
year.
but he left earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So is that story about right then, Saajan? Or
It's about right, I
think. Is it a little bit more?
Yeah.
I feel like as if there's a little bit more detail that Rishay might have missed. Is it? Because you're saying it's about right.
It's about right. So the only thing I'd add is that we have a lot of, from afterwards, we've realised we have a lot of mutual friends just from the area.
Oh, afterwards, yeah.
So,
okay.
You go on someone's Instagram and you see XYZ is your mutual, which kind of made me feel confident to write all those comments on your... Because I thought, this is a local person. She only lives around the corner from me, so it works out well when we go into places like radio and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, she's very good at she's not just doing the media and outreach stuff, which is an engagement. Media engagement is her head of comms and engagement is her job title for this project.
Right.
But she's been helping with the creative direction as well. Although I'm the creative lead, Rishay has been really, really instrumental in all that. And because we've got a good rapport, like you say, together, it really helps to propel the project forward when you've got that shared vision together that you can trust somebody with.
You mentioned, Saajan, that you used to kind of go around just taking, I say just, but taking photos of individuals doing their everyday thing. Why? Where does and how did you kind of go about doing it? How does one just take a photo? I know it sounds very easy, but do you have to get permission? And more than that, what was your MO? Why did you go about doing that?
Well, first of all, I actually started off and still am a music producer, so that's my number one love, first and foremost. I picked up a camera. I just picked up an old thing from eBay because I wanted to shoot some sort of music videos to go with my work. And I've always felt that our communities, whether I'm talking Handsworth, Wood, Perry Barr, Hamstead, all the way to the other side to Erdington, Smethwick, these areas to me are very special areas, and I've always wanted to document them in some way or shape or form. So as time went on, I started to develop a love for the actual camera work as I was learning the videography, and that, so we're on a side mission now, and it's taken on a form of its own. So that's how it all began realistically, and I sort of augmented that with my political interests, my anti-imperialist interests, socialist interests, and that sort of informed the project, the direction it would go. So it gave it a backbone rather than just being pretty pictures. It became something a bit more than that, something a bit more community oriented. I thought, why just take photos of people? So I started out taking the candids of people as I gained confidence, just candid street photography that a lot of people do. And eventually, just to answer your question, how does one start to approach people? I just started taking photos. Sometimes people started coming up to me and saying, what are you taking photos of? And not in a confrontational manner. You'd be quite surprised. People are camera shy sometimes, but a lot of people are just interested to see what's going on.
I think if your intention's like pretty much non-kind of commercial or non-exploitative, then I think people are generally all right, aren't they?
Yeah, and a lot of the people I started photographing were people that I knew or semi-knew, people who I knew through people, or just walking. Just these photos are not photos that have been taken going out to the city centre, taking a day out to say I'm going to take some photos today. These are photos that have been gathered from my daily life. So it's been going to Military Supermarket on Soho Road to do the grocery shopping. It's been at the Gurdwara. It's been, walking past Handsworth Park, seeing Eid in the park, and asking the organisers, can I, respectfully take some photos? It's all community based, and it's all part of daily life.
But where does that come from, though? Where does that come from? I mean, and the reason why I'm trying to dig a little bit deeper is because, these days, and this is not a dig at anybody on social media, especially Instagram, but it's very flashy. It's very, like you said, it's very nice. It's curated. It's a selfie. There's a lot of lights. There's a lot of makeup. I don't want to stereotype or be generalized, but it's that kind of thing.
Yes.
Whereas your intent or your motive behind this project seems to be very much about not even showing off, but just letting people know about the positives in your area. It's about community. So where does that come from? Is that something that your parents or guardians or whatever, is that something that they've kind of promoted and it's kind of rubbed off on you? Is that down to education? Was there a particular moment that was in your life that you thought, this is me?
Yes, so I could definitely speak on that. So as you said, the family thing is a very important thing. So most of my family is based in Birmingham, from both sides of the family. We've got, my dad's a Birmingham boy. He came from London, but he's a Birmingham boy. And all these stories that they used to tell me of coming to this country, working in, whether it would be factories or whether it would be working in the NHS, as lots of our immigrant communities have worked in the NHS, those sort of things definitely rubbed off on me. And we have I'm part of a very close-knit community, so a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people from Birmingham, especially people who get educated, etc. And I think especially sometimes in the immigrant mindset, the mindset is to make as much money as you can, pass down to the next generation, keep going. And I sort of found that people who were doing that were moving away from the areas that they came from, and they were, sometimes they badmouth where they're from, and these areas are not perfect, we know that, but I have a deep love for these areas that it really pains me when I hear people say, oh, I'm not going back to that such and such place. I'm glad I'm etc., etc. And I think I've always thought people are missing the real beauty of these areas, these different cultures that are together, these different ways of living that have actually melded into almost a new sort of culture, and almost a British fusion culture of all these different, even the way we speak, even the way I'm talking now, my accent is dictated by, not only an Indian sort of slang, it's dictated by patois, it's dictated by other groups who've come into the area. These are things that have really dictated how I feel, and the project is almost a love letter to these areas where I've grown up. So I'd say it's the roots, it's the family, it's the influence of also the political aspect of things. I've seen, things change so much in Birmingham. I've seen people pushed out of their homes. I've seen land being bought that's completely empty and desolate, and I've seen people struggling from family to friends, and these stories are not being shown, and these are things very close to myself, my friends and family. So it's a very personal thing, it's a very emotional thing, and it's a case of identity, as you say, Ibrar, that's actually fueled this project.
Can you give me an example of the sorts of stuff that we might get to hear? I'm not even going to say if, but when we turn up at the Reflections Gallery.
Yeah, for sure. So one good example is a poem called Song for the Seamstress, and that's by a poet called Poetry by Raj. It's talking about the piecework, commission-based sewing work that a lot of South Asian and other communities did when they first came here, and a lot of it was quite exploitative and continues today. So it's quite interesting. I would like to show this one because we managed to film this in an old abandoned sewing factory in Handsworth, which has its roof caved in. It's almost like a time capsule. It still has all the old sewing machines there. It's been abandoned for about 20 to 30 years. And we managed to film in there and managed to get all their old tapes, everything has been left there from the day it was abandoned. So we'd really like to introduce this poem to everybody, and it's called Song for the Seamstress.
Walls have ears, but if they could speak, many a tale they would relate of aching backs and leaden feet, of the whir and hum of the sewing machines. On the dusty floor, murky halls, plaster peeling off the walls. Oh, if only these walls could speak of the endless grind, day and night, no holidays, no respite. Ah, wait, a glimmer of light, a cup of chai, some gup-shup, some music, some dance would their day enhance, and then back to the whir and grind of the sewing machines. So for a better tomorrow, stitch by stitch, seam upon seam, pile upon pile, at the piecework rate, overworked and underpaid in this dungeon of drudgery.
Rishay, a question for you then. Regarding Saajan very articulate, he sort of mentioned politics and faith, but I want to explore the little bit of the faith element with you. How important is and Saajan, you can pick up on after Rishay, please, if that's okay. But how important is faith to you generally, and how visible is it in this particular exhibition, the Reflection Gallery?
Faith for me is very important. I am a Christian. I come from Christian background. Jamaica, my background is Jamaican, and Jamaica is very much Christian based. There's so many churches on that island. It's quite interesting. But I think as a community as well, so many people lean in on their faith, especially when it comes to sometimes just decision making, what to do, depending on what communities they go to, what schools they go to. Faith plays a really, really big part. And so, when it came to this project, I know Saj wanted to definitely incorporate that into the poetry and the artists that he's even included. So I know that there were artists, Shano, who definitely leaned onto that, them being of Islamic faith. So it definitely plays a part, which I think definitely highlights the community in which we live in. I think it definitely shows that greatly, and I think it's very much a big part of that as well.
Saajan, your thoughts?
Yes.
How important is faith, spirituality, to you and to this project?
So I'd say it's very important. So for myself, although my religious beliefs are perhaps not as embedded as Rashid's, for example. My belief in community and the importance of these institutions. For example, the Gurdwara, I visit the Gurdwara probably every other day. I really believe in the importance of the free, langar, which is a free food kitchen. I believe in the importance of the work that the masjids do, the churches do. And that's why we've made sure that, for example, we approached Eid in the Park, who organise every year in Handsworth Park, as you probably know. We really wanted to involve all these different faiths from the community and make sure they feel that they are heard, because the project, although there's a political spine to the project, but people live their lives by their faith, a lot of people, and I don't see any reason why that shouldn't be, as really making them feel included and showing how people worship, documenting that, making sure in years to come people can see this is how people did it in Handsworth. And yes, so I think the importance of these institutions in our community, we've tried to document that as much as possible.
And I think as well it shows how much we can live in harmony as well. I think sometimes, when it comes to how things are depicted on the news, it's always trying to show how it's combated between religions and things like that. But, Birmingham and Handsworth and North Birmingham are a great example that we can all just live together. We all have different religions, we all have different faiths, but we can come together, we can speak to each other, So I think it's really important to highlight that.
Yes, definitely agree.
Right, don't take this in a bad way, guys. I want to ask, how old? Give me a ballpark figure as to how old you guys are, because
what should we say?
I'm 21. How old are you?
I'm only 18, bro.
The reason why I ask is because I'm quite old now, but you guys are, I'm assuming, relatively young individuals, but yet you have very old heads on young shoulders. So again, where does that maturity come from? Because it's not, oh gosh, this sounds really bad, doesn't it? But because it's not every day that you kind of come across people who are community oriented, very altruistic is what I'm trying to say. You don't get that very often, or I'm getting the vibe that you don't get that very often. So again, we don't have to put an age on it, a number on it. But why is that? Why are you guys like that?
After you, Saajan.
Well, I think
she's just going to bounce off your
add
a little bit more masala to it, and then be like, yeah, this is what I think.
Well, first of all, Ibrar, I'd like to say that you've got a lovely, luscious head of hair, so
right?
I wouldn't say that you're old.
All right, moving on.
No, but I think what you call being an old head, or what you call, having this altruistic head on our shoulders, I think it's perhaps because this project is almost a antithesis to what you'd usually see out there. Like you said before, the corporatized projects, the shiny projects, the things that are using communities, coming into communities to take video, pictures, whatever it could be, and then leaving and using the sort of street cred, I suppose you could say, of being involved in community to further their organisation, or to, benefit in some way themselves monetarily or whatever it would be. But this sort of old head term, I actually don't think it's unique necessarily to myself and Rashay or the project. I meet many people in our communities who have lived here for decades, and their parents have lived here, their grandparents have lived here, and I actually find that those sort of people have this same sort of old head mentality where community is important to them. And although that's been eroded in media, and the media would maybe have you believe that nobody cares, people only care about themselves, it's the old mantra of I'm alright, Jack, it's me and my immediate family. But from the people I've been meeting through this project, it's actually boosted me. I actually met somebody, going off topic a little bit, I met somebody in London, it was a couple of years ago, and it was in East London. I think it was in Bow Hospital, and he was one of the secretaries, and he was telling me how much he loves Birmingham because in London, a lot of their communities have almost gone past the point of no return now, that they've been pushed out so much from the original areas that 20 years ago were so vibrant. People were living, although there were still obviously struggles, but these communities hadn't yet, the youth centres hadn't been shut down, these music venues hadn't been shut down, the XYZ hadn't been shut down, and people hadn't been moved out due to the cost of actually affording to housing. So he said he loves Birmingham because when he goes back there, he still sees that old East London in areas like Handsworth, in areas like Aston, in areas all around Birmingham, even coming down to South Birmingham where Unity FM is based. We see the same sort of thing. And so talking about the old head thing, it's almost a reflection, pardon the pun, it's a reflection of how the community is feeling. They have dictated this project. They have almost shaped our thoughts, haven't they, Rashay? So yes, what you're saying, Ibrar, is actually a reflection. So thank you very much for your words as well. I appreciate that.
It takes a degree of skill and an application to do this sort of thing. So did you guys study at university? Did you, Rashay, did you do, I don't know, like some sort of arts related degree before you got involved? And same question to you, Saajan. Let's kick off with Rashay first.
So I actually did my undergrad in business law.
I take it back then.
Did my undergrad in business law, and then I decided later on that I wanted to go more into HR. So then I did my master's in human resources, and I'm glad I did because I really, really enjoy. So nothing really in the arts, actually, but I've always known I've had that creativeness within me. And I think a lot of us have that. We just don't know how to channel it. We just don't know how to use it. And sometimes I have been a bit lost in what to do with that kind of energy. So that's why projects like this are so great in like honing that skill, you know, because as I mentioned to you earlier as well, while I love my profession and my 9 to 5, it's like I need something outside of that also in order to kind of, you know, perfect the other skills that I have. And I think a lot of people can actually relate to that as well, but they just don't know how to do that.
How to kind of go about doing it. And
exactly.
Saajan, same question to you, please.
Yes, so I've trained as an engineer and a draftsman. So I did my engineering degree at Nottingham University, and a bit later down the line I did a master's in humanitarian engineering. So that was my sort of way of taking those technical skills and applying it in a more humanitarian sort of way, approaching writing, talking about development in other countries. So I like to talk about how other societies how we could potentially have a society here that's, as you said, more altruistic, more providing housing, healthcare for people. So I like to look at how other countries have done it. And through doing that course, I veered into the writing about development in socialist countries is my main interest. And so I've sort of tied the engineering in, you know, construction, and, you know, I'm trying to make a hybrid. So there's a lot of hybrid things going on in the project.
So talk to me a little bit about influences then, because this particular project, it has a lot going on. It's got photography, film, audio, all sorts. So, Saajan, in the sort of art space, who are your sort of influences? Who do you kind of look up to, and who do you think, oh wow, you know, that was cool, or I want to be like that person? And also politically, you've mentioned a little bit about socialism. We talked a little bit about altruism, community. Who are your, I guess, very simply put, who are your influences when it comes to art and politics?
Yeah, so I mean, naturally, I think talking about the photography and video influences would be most appropriate to start off with this project. So people like Yogesh Walia, the documentary work that he did back in, I think it was the 80s, 70s. People like Polga Caesar in terms of the photography. I loved what he did with the Handsworth riots, his work with Benjamin Zephaniah, you know, the late, great Benjamin Zephaniah. Really getting in close and sort of not being fearful with your photography, being brave and getting right into the mix of the action. Poga Caesar, for me, is, you know, really the ultimate. People like Sharon Duggal, who wrote the book The Handsworth Times, who we actually have on the project. She's written an introduction to the project, which we're very grateful for. People from that generation, I really love their photography and video work, and I don't know what it is. There's something magical about that generation. There was a simplicity and a community-based nature to their work. If we're talking a bit more recent, the things that I've grown up with musically, you know, growing up where I've grown up, you come out of school, you hear Bhangra going down the road, and the other way you hear reggae, you hear these mixes of beats mixing together. So my favourite stuff was always RDB, the Bhangra garage mixes. It was Bali Sagu talking about his video work. If we're talking about really pushing the boundary in terms of video work, Bali Sagu's videos were out of this world, phenomenal. And if we're talking about grime, I loved NODB, I loved Deadly, the producer from Handsworth. I loved Bowser Boss, from, I think he's from South Birmingham, Predator, Iron Soul, Suck Knight, all these bass heavy genres, that's all influenced my music, and there is that music in the project as well. So when I've been working with an artist called Sitcho. He's a rapper from local in Handsworth Wood, and I've produced a song. So that's all having that mixture, that amalgamation, using the Bollywood strings, mixing it with the drill bass line. So, and then if we're talking about politics, to answer your last question, we're talking people like Che Guevara, we're talking about people like Thomas Sankara, and if we're talking back home, we're talking people like Bhagat Singh, people like Udham Singh, people who really united a community and made them really understand what it meant to fight imperialism in their own country, and not only kicking out the colonizers, but making a new society that would be equitable for all people. So those are the influences, and I've sort of mashed them all together, and people will definitely hear that in the sounds, the video work, and the photography of this project.
Rishi, who are your sort of artistic influences and political as well, I suppose?
I suppose for myself, it's not as in-depth as Saajan's. Especially growing up, I think my heritage within the Jamaican kind of environment has definitely had a big influence. So when it comes to like still posts, really enjoyed listening to them. And also even like Benjamin Zephaniah, who unfortunately passed away last year. But even when we were in school and we'd look at the anthologies and different poets and John Agard, for me that was very, very big for me as a child. And then as I got older, I think when it came to music, it definitely started to branch out a little bit. So it kind of even left Birmingham almost, and it started to now look at different artists in Cuba. I'm really, love my Cuban salsa. Definitely into like more ska, things like that from the Caribbean. So I think for me, my musical influence is definitely a mixture of many, many different things.
And we also have a salsa dancer in the house.
Oh gosh.
Talking about the Cuban influence.
Yes.
What's quite interesting is that I think I heard from at the beginning of tell me if I heard this correctly, but you guys said that this isn't your first rodeo. Is this the second festival or the third?
So in terms of a festival exhibition, large scale gallery, this would definitely be our first rodeo in terms of that.
Yeah.
However, we have tested the concept out a couple of years ago in a art gallery in Digbeth, which is called Eastside Projects. So they were kind enough to give us the space as part of their community program that they have going on every year. And that was a much smaller, pared down version. People can go to Life of a People on Instagram, and there's a short Instagram reel where we showed the work. What we showed was the small Polaroid pictures, which I sometimes give out when I am engaging with people. It's just a way and it's something that's not necessarily unique to this project, but it's something very good that you can engage with people over. You gain that trust with them, and they know that they know you're not some sort of weirdo or anything. And we exhibited all those photos, and we wrote the interviews in UV pen, and we shined a UV light over the top of it so you could turn it on, turn it off. When you turn the UV light on, you'd see all these interviews, people talking about even their involvement in local informal economies, people talking about, I'm sending money back home but I miss my mum, in Punjabi or other languages from the area. And we had a great reception from that, yes, but in terms of a large-scale exhibition, this would be our first. So it's a learning process, I think, definitely. Yeah.
Rishay, tell me a little bit about another item within the Reflections Gallery exhibition called Rajni's Story. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, definitely. So Rajni's Story is as you know, it says in the title, story by Rajni. She talks about her history, her experience of being an asylum seeker, coming to the UK with her husband, finding out she is pregnant. Her husband does not want the child because it is a girl. So having to go through that abuse, through her husband, having to move out and, find other ways and seek shelter. So this is definitely a very powerful story that you can definitely experience through her lyrics. And also one thing that you will notice at the gallery is that the illustration for this is by someone called Wahida Rahman Mir. And it definitely highlights, it's a great way to illustrate her story through imagery. And you definitely get to feel her expression, definitely get to feel her grief through it.
Hi, my name is Rajni. I came UK before 2 years ago with my husband on a tourist visa. We live in my husband's friend's house. We came here after a marriage. We just want to stay here 2 or 3 months. I'm pregnant that time due to my medical problem. My doctor booked my ultrasound scan. After my scan, when my husband knows it's a baby girl, so he left the house and came back after 3 days. He said, "You give me a stress. I don't want a baby girl. I want a boy." He forced me to go back India and abort the baby girl because he know here it's a difficult without my permission. When he came back, he drunk, even he cannot stand properly. He fight with me because he don't want a girl. He pushed me very badly and he gone and never came back. I called so many people that time for a help that they give me advice and so many charities numbers. That time I apply for asylum because I feel I'm in a danger. My sister-in-law is here. She married to a British person. She phoned me and threatened me. When my husband abandoned me, my family friend find someone to help me. She picked me from where I'm lived because my husband left me alone. My friend really helps me a lot. She's a single mother. She said, "You are safe in this country." She gave me advice for asylum, so I apply for asylum. My daughter, health worker, and her child carer helped me because they know my story. After a few time, I receive ARC card from the Home Office. It's an asylum ID card. Everything going good because people really helps me. But after waiting, Home Office refused my case. I'm really disappointed. They said, "Your baby is small, so she can live anywhere, and your study is good, so you can do job in your own country." I feel really bad because I told everything to the officer when they took my interview. My husband's family is really rich. My mother-in-law and my father-in-law, they both are retired government employees. My husband came here 2 times on a study visa or nearly 2 or 3 times on a visitor visa. They are connected with the political peoples. I am not safe there, but after all of this story, asylum officer refused my case. Now my friend helped me. We take advice from a solicitor and they apply my case. I'm waiting for the results. Hope everything good.
In terms of this being the first big outing, as it were, let's just say, for want of a better word, how do you measure success? What will a successful reflection gallery look like?
So a successful project for me would be one where all the communities engage with the project from the areas, because we do have, although I have my deep love for the areas that we come from, there has begun to be a lot of siloing of communities and a lot of individualizing of certain communities and segregation, which I, growing up, I'm sure it was there. Maybe I'm looking back with tinted lenses. However, it's something that I'd like to break down those barriers. So that would be a successful project for me. Going a little bit deeper, my long-term aims for this sort of work would be to get people politically engaged and to get people thinking about organising. So, for example, I organised with a group called Fight Racism, Fight Imperialism. They do a lot of great work in spreading political knowledge and things like that. They have stalls in Handsworth. And getting sort of that sort of fire of old. One of the poets, his name's J.J. Beardsmore, and he's from Handsworth himself. He talks about, even his football group was called the Panthers at Handsworth Leisure Centre. He talks about the ACHSO, which is the African Caribbean Self-Help Organisation, and the organising they did throughout the area. He talks about the Indian Workers Association, all these political establishments in the area, and the rich history that Birmingham has in general, to be honest, in political organising and things like that. However, I didn't want to do it in a way that was dry and that was inaccessible, and and respects people's time as well, and is not something that's such a high bar that people have no starting point, no rung on the ladder. I wanted to really create this broad spectrum where people can jump on at any point and engage. So the first step of this project, I suppose, is engagement and getting people to really think in this political way about cost of living, about Palestine, about these important issues. Yeah, so it's a combination of art and politics. So that would be a successful project for me.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that you started off with not having, the silos within the community, because I think that's definitely been one of the main things, driving forces for the project, even when it comes to going back to the translations. Making sure that it is accessible. So it's making sure that those who are able to go, those who can go, you should be able to go. It's for 10 weeks.
Yes, we haven't mentioned that, have we?
Yes, but, those who can go, that they can definitely interact. It's very much an interactive gallery. It's not just to watch, but to read, to understand, to get an understanding of the people who are writing the poetry, who are singing, and to also be able to realize that these are people that are your neighbors. These are people that you see in the shop. These are people that you see down the road, and how everyone is going through their own circumstances, their own experiences within the world. But sometimes you don't always realize that because people are in their silos, So definitely going back to what would make it successful is seeing those silos being broken and seeing the communities coming together and seeing, maybe on the opening day or during the 10 weeks, the different people, the different races, the different religions that go, that view, that take in what is there. And that would definitely show the success and the impact of the Reflections Gallery.
You mentioned the late Benjamin Zephaniah's name, who's obviously one of Birmingham's foremost poets. But there's also going to be poetry in this exhibition as well, isn't there, Saajan? So tell me a little bit about that.
That's right. I'm glad you touched on that, actually. So the previous artist I mentioned, J.J. Beardsmore, we actually shot his video in front of the brand new mural, which is in Handsworth Park, which was by, if you go on @CreateNotDestroy on Instagram, you'll see the very talented artist who created that. And we've shot it in such a way that it almost looks like the artist J.J. Beardsmore is talking to the late Benjamin Zephaniah, and he's actually riffing and talking about the things that were different in Benjamin Zephaniah's younger days and the things that he laments. It's almost a lament and a hopeful message at the end, but a lot of it is a lament. So Benjamin Zephaniah's passing actually came at a very important turning point of this project. It happened as we were recording a lot of the work, and it almost propelled the project really, because it reminded you it made me go back and look at his old work, to be honest, where he's walking down Soho Road. He's talking about there's one poem he did called, I think it's called Soho Road. He says Soho Road is where the heart beats. I think that's the end line of the poem, and that really has such a bearing on this project in terms of capturing the colourfulness of the community and the way that Benjamin approached his work. He tied in politics, and he did it in such a way that people could access it. He did it in such a way that it was so interesting to the ear, and he did it in such a way that inspired a whole generation of people, which perhaps even, I know that the artist himself never understands maybe, or is maybe not aware of how much inspiration they've had on people. But Benjamin Zephaniah definitely, in terms of poetry, if we're talking poetry, we're talking Handsworth, you can't mention this project without mentioning Benjamin Zephaniah.
And would you have liked to have worked with him if he was...
Interestingly, we were in the very, very, very early stages. I don't know if I should say this, but we were in the very, very early stages of hopefully getting him on board in some aspect of the project, whether it would not be poetry. He's a very busy person, and we would have loved to. Honestly, it would have been an honour. It would have been an honour to have him. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about. I mean, it sounds like a fascinating project, and like it's on for 10 weeks. I make that 2.5 months, so it's plenty of time for people to pop down and see what it's all about. But in terms of this project, we talked a little bit about success before. What would success look like? But what would you ultimately like to do with this particular project? In the sense, would you like to have another one next year, bigger, better, or more encompassing? Or would you like to have a roadshow, really show the UK what Soho Road and Handsworth means to you? Or would you rather keep it more local, hyper local, by sort of going into schools and communities and giving these, the future leaders and people an insight into what Handsworth means and what Handsworth ought to mean?
Well, I'm glad you used that word hyperlocal, because it's actually a word that I use to describe this project when I speak about it to people. So I think initially we'd like to tour the work around the areas, so perhaps at Handsworth Leisure Centre, perhaps in Aston, and we're in talks with a few other places, maybe a couple of churches as well. And really, first of all, build the base around the local area, build that base. Eventually down the line, I'm still going to be collecting photos. I'm still going to be working with the local artists. I haven't stopped that. And I've actually gathered, we've got 8 poems, stories / songs on the project. However, that's 8 of about 16 that I've gathered. And some of those are still in the works. So we've got plenty of material going forward, plenty of scope to expand the concept of the project. And plenty of scope to learn from the project if we need to bring it down, if we need to tailor it a bit this way, that way. This is all a learning experience for us. But yeah, keeping it the local base is very important for us at the moment. We don't want to just take this work and start running off around the country. But one day I think that would be very important, to let the work breathe, let the work see a new audience, let people know what we have to offer in North Birmingham. There's been a spate of YouTubers who have been coming to the area recently, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it when I speak to them on the street. They say, we saw this YouTuber here the other day, like on Nimve Road, for example, talking about the fly tipping, or someone on Soho Road saying this is the worst area, one of the 4 worst areas in the UK. And it's those sort of things where people from outside would benefit from seeing this work. Not that we have to convince them, but it would be beneficial, I think. Yes.
Riche, in terms of an entrance fee, you guys have said that it's a free project, which I commend you for, because obviously there's Saajan, you mentioned the cost of living crisis and so on. So if this is about the community, for the community, then it some would argue that it ought to be free, which it is. So my question is that how is this thing being funded? How do you guys do this? Or is it just completely zeros everywhere? It's completely voluntary. How does it work?
So we luckily, and we're very thankful to those who have donated and given. We've definitely had those who have just loved what we're doing and loved the project and loved the enthusiasm. So they have given, towards in order to support. But also want to, shout out those companies who have decided to do particular things. And Saajan, if you want to talk more on that, just from the goodness of their heart as well for this project, because as you said, it's very much from the ground up. It's just the two of us. Started with Saajan's vision. Now we've come together, and so we're really just trying to make this work. And as you said, it is free to go, and it's going to stay free. But we really are thankful to those who have been able to give and in support. Don't know, Saajan, if you want to speak more on those companies who have really supported.
Sure. Yeah, so for example, we've got an art studio on board called Shelby X Studios. That's Shelby X Studios. And they have very, very kindly offered to do zines, which, if people don't know, it's just little sort of photo books, I suppose. In this case, it will be a little photo book with some of the concepts written, with some of the poetry written in there in all the different languages. And they've very, very kindly done it out of love of the project. They're doing it for association with the project. And people like, for example, Sharon Duggal, she's written an introduction to the project, and she has waived her fee, which is amazing for us to have somebody who's established on board, someone from the area, someone who's been there, done it. So things like that have really, really helped. And JAAG Festival, which is a Punjabi, Pahari, Pathwari literature and language festival, they're opening up the project. They are helping us to, they're sharing their resources, whether that be mic, stage, audience, that sort of thing. So on the 22nd of June, we're having two parallel events, JAAG Festival and Reflections Gallery. And they have, really helped us to, because it's our first rodeo, they've helped us with the organisation. They've given us tips, they've given us advice, things like that. And, not only that, we also have, local people. For example, we have a local boxing coach called H Padfit. They've managed to donate to our project just out of love for the project. So that's, cold hard cash, which is very important, as well as the in-kind support is very important. And we are also crowdfunding. So if people do want to donate to the project, that's reflections.bio. So people can donate to our crowdfunder, and we'd really love them too. And we also have local people. These are people we have met through the project. For example, one of the videographers who is going to be helping us out, he's someone who I met in the barbershop and I took his photo. He got involved in the project. He's a student filmmaker named Marshall. He's very talented. And another person we've met, Rahul, he's another videographer who I met through this project. And a lot of the things, to be honest, Ibrar, we have met them through this project and they have jumped on board. For example, another person who is another photo subject in the project, he is also a carpenter. So he has actually been making us up the exhibition boards, which are going to go outside, weatherproofing them, making sure they're all safe and certified and safety standards, etc. So it's all really community driven, even going down to the financials. And to be honest, Rishi, I hadn't thought about it like that before, but now that Ibrar's brought it out of us, a lot of the things are financially community driven as well. And yeah, we didn't want to have to turn to the community at all, really, to gain any sort of funding, but it has been difficult. Grants are difficult to get, especially for smaller community projects like ourselves. Most of the council funding, for example, is only for charities or for established organisations, that sort of thing. So it has been difficult, but we're waiting to hear on another grant as well. So
yeah, it's been difficult, but on top of that, it's definitely been a reflection of the community from their support for us and what they've been able to donate and what they've been able to support us with. So I think in a roundabout way, it's Reflections Gallery, but it's reflected the community and the help and what we can achieve, and we all just come together,
Okay, so Saajan, having looked at the breakdown of the Reflections Gallery exhibition, community-led exhibition. There was a particular sort of, again, item on the menu which seemed really quite interesting. I think it was entitled Roots, and it was by the artist called Muni, or Muni. Can you tell us a bit about her?
Yes, that's right. So Muni is an artist who was living here in Birmingham, in Spring Hill, Hockley area. So if people know where the Tesco is, it's like literally there. So her story is very interesting because she, like many other people in our communities, is a so-called economic migrant, although we see them as just part of our community. And on a work visa, working here, sending money back home, going through the financial strain of all that. And she, unfortunately, during this process, found out she lost her job. So being on a work visa, she had barely a few weeks to leave once she got the letter from the Home Office. And it's almost a very meta-analysis, because as she was writing that, she was going through all these struggles, and to be honest, I'm shocked she managed to even finish the poem under incredible stress. So this is all about roots, setting down her roots. She's talking about walking through the jewellery quarter from Hockley, trying to find her roots, and it's talking about that real violence of moving place and ripping people from their communities and not letting people settle. So this is Roots by Muni.
I take my long trunks for a walk around the jewellery quarter, catching glimpses of people sleeping in their rooms while I giant across the dark streets. I am the gaze now, unknown and unheard. The air around me gets sucked with each step. Light diminishes as a black hole starter pack kicks off. It brews poisonous fumes. Remnants of dead hearts that were cut out and stuffed into jars, pickled for fun and sold in the carnivals in the underbellies of the motherland. Travelling like the love-lorn clouds, the miasma spreads and secures larger boundaries. Policing the changing diaspora of a peaceful, ignorant slumberland. Well past the Cinderella hour, Erebus paints the Stygian land with broad strokes. I can hear my heart beating, my pulse racing, the sound like drum beats in my ear. I west it, and yet it doesn't set. It is hung on the eastern sky of my canvas, and jut out like a tumor. Yet it is just a world that seeks to hide itself from others, tormenting me, ever voracious, eating into another world which is blissfully unaware.
Before I conclude, I've got a question for you both. Same question. What does Handsworth mean to you? Rishay, I'm going to start off with you.
Handsworth. Handsworth for me, it's where I grew up. It's where I was born. It's home. It very much is home. The different times I've moved away, I've always come back. And it's definitely been a place where because I think sometimes when you're born somewhere, you sometimes feel as though, I just want to get out. I just want to go somewhere else. And so the many times I've gone somewhere else and I've come back, it's definitely grown that love that I have for Handsworth, and finding out and discovering new places within Handsworth as well, being so close to Handsworth Park. And I used to go there a lot when I was a child, but then as I grew older I kind of stopped going there. But recently I'm finding that love again for Handsworth Park and seeing all the different communities. And even the other day I was walking and this guy, he was carrying like an instrument box, and I looked back to see, and it was a saxophone, and he pulled it out and he was like playing. And even just that, we started to speak and started to talk about, how long he's been playing the saxophone. And I started to tell him about how I love also playing my bass and things like that. So for me, Handsworth...
Did he become a subject for the another one of your... Should have taken it.
You know what? We did
discuss this, yes.
We actually kind of said that sometimes it's nice to just leave it.
Just to live in the moment,
because
have the conversation,
right,
rather than saying, can I take your photo? Because it just kind of breaks it up a little bit as well. So I just wanted to live in the moment and just have the conversation with him. But no, going back to your question, Handsworth for me is definitely home. It's where I know, I'm so familiar with it, and I feel as though I'm familiar with almost the people there as well, and the diversity and the community. So definitely Handsworth means for me, it's home.
Saajan?
And for myself, so I'm from Handsworth Wood, which is just around the corner, but Handsworth for me is a focal hub. It's where most of my family's from, my friends are from, it's where my barber's is, it's where my Gurdwara is. It's where my whole family goes to for example, go to Baby Nanki Gurdwara. My family all goes there. It's where I go to just where I've since a kid just walking up and down Rookery Road, walking up and down College Road, going into Handsworth Wood, even going to Hamstead. I'm branching out a little bit now, but all of these areas, especially Handsworth, it has such history and such colour and such vibrancy that gives you a boost. It gives you a boost, because when I've moved away, very very momentarily, I haven't moved away as long as Riche, but I have been away, and I do feel that loss, that sense of I'm missing my community, because we are such a close-knit community and we share so much support network. The support network is the community, which I do believe is very unique to those areas, because maybe the culture, maybe the mix of people who are there. I go down Soho Road and I don't see that same, although there is a lot of poverty in Handsworth. If you compare it to certain other areas, everything is boarded up. So for some reason there is this insulation that Handsworth and Soho Road has, and I really hope for all of our sakes that remains to be the case.
And finally, details again for the exhibition. Fire away.
So Reflections Gallery, I'll just mention it again. Reflections Gallery is a free photography, film and music exhibition, and it's running for 10 weeks outside Handsworth Library and Southern City College.
You can experience Reflections Gallery at the JAAG Festival on the 22nd of June, where you'll be able to preview a lot of the photography, music and poetry before the official launch.
All the work is being translated into 6 different languages, and that's including filmed work of local people, singing, rapping, telling their stories, making poetry, and we've got people from asylum seekers to carers to delivery drivers. These are everyday people, and that's part of the Reflections. We call it Reflections because it's a reflection of a community in the photos, but also reflecting on the things around you. And if you come down, you might just see yourself in the photographs, so that would be one reason alone to come.
Guys, it's been a pleasure having you both in the studio, and it's really nice to see local people who've got a genuine love for their local community and not wanting that community to be used as a political or punch bag at times. Maybe sometimes you know there are certain parts of Birmingham and wider that sometimes get highlighted, I think unfairly, but it's lovely to see that you guys are trying to almost like defend the honor of your local area. So I'd off my imaginary cap to you there. So again, thank you again. I hope the exhibition Reflection Gallery goes from strength to strength, and hopefully if you have any other sort of ideas or exhibitions or plans for the future, then you know where we are, and so please do pop by and give us some breaking news, as it were, in your
We'll
lives.
make sure to do that, and
Definitely.
we'd just like to thank Unity FM and yourself, Ibrar, for making us feel so welcome and giving us this platform, because
from the day we knocked on the door
from the day we
to here.
knocked on the door, it was actually Riche's idea. I was all feeling dejected at home.
Carpe diem.
Yeah.
Seize the day.
And I was
knock
like,
that door. knock that door.
Saajan, we're gonna go.
Yeah,
Knock
Riche
on
just
doors.
Got me, come on, let's go and knock on their doors. If they're not going to answer the phone, okay, no, take that out.
I blame my receptionist. No, it was if you don't shoot, you don't score. So thank you both very much for doing that, and thank you both very much for coming in today.
Thank you, Barr.
Thank you, bro. Thank you very
No
much.
worries.